Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Sarah Hunstead. I am a paediatric nurse, a mum of two, and I am founder of CPR Kids. And today I'm talking about, can you put sunscreen on your baby? So it's a question that is debated a lot. But before we get into that, can I get you just to give me a thumbs up or a wave while we're live now, just to make sure that all of the technology is working as it should? And the other thing that I would love you to do is that if you can tag anyone in the comments below who you think will benefit from this good evidence-based information. Now, this is part one of Can I Put Sunscreen on My Baby? Part two will be both myself and pediatrician Dr. Deb Levy talking all about sunscreen in babies as well. But what I want to go through today is answering the question, can I put sunscreen on my baby? And also, what are the two different types of sunscreens? In part two, we'll be going into suggestions of different sunscreens to use, patch testing, and so on. So first of all, what I really want to focus on is, can I put sunscreen on my baby under the age of 6 months? Because if you look at most sunscreens when you buy them from, the chemist or the supermarket or whatever, you'll see on there that it might say baby sunscreen or it might say junior sunscreen, for example. But then in little letters underneath, it says not to be used under the age of 6 months. And you think, well, why would you put baby sunscreen on there? You just think, okay, hang on a sec, what's going on here? So before we go into that, let's talk about the two different types of sunscreens that there are. So number one, sunscreen, well, actually, I'm going to rephrase that. It's not two different types of sunscreens. They work in two ways. Okay, that's probably a better way of saying it. So first of all, one type of sunscreens are called blocking or UV reflectors. Okay, so what this type of sunscreen does is that they reflect the UV rays off the skin, or they just block it. So they're also known as physical sunscreens. So often these are your zinc oxides, your titanium dioxides, and often they're the ones that when you rub them on your skin, it gets that kind of that white appearance, if you know what I mean by that. Some of them don't. Some of them are clear, some of them are tinted, it just depends. So basically these type of sunscreens are designed to sit on the skin and block or reflect. Okay. Next, we have the sunscreens that absorb UV radiation. Okay, so what this means is that they're called absorbent or chemical sunscreens, and they usually have a real mixture of synthetic chemicals, words that are too long for me to be able to say without looking like an idiot. So I'm not going to actually try and pronounce them. And they're the ones that usually absorb very, very quickly. Okay. Both types of sunscreens can be mixed into different bases as well. And, there's a whole lot of different reasons for that. Now, they are generally the two different, I shouldn't say two different types of sunscreens, I keep saying that, but what I mean is the way that sunscreens work. So the two different ways. Now, why did I go into that? Because that's important when we read the Australian College of Dermatologists positioning statements of the use of sunscreen in babies. Now, why am I telling you about this? Because you need to know, okay? The Australian College of Dermatologists have released a positioning statement on that, and I'll put the link to it in the comments below, because remember, everything we do here at CPR Kids is evidence-based from good, reputable sources, all right? Really important. So I'm going to read out what they say, and then I'm going to explain it a little bit more. Okay, so the question is, are sunscreens safe for young babies? So babies under the age of 6 months. So because very young babies, less than 6 months of age, absorb more of any chemical applied to the skin than adults, the widespread regular use of chemical sunscreens is not recommended. Okay, so remember, we've just gone through the two different types. Yeah. Instead, avoiding direct sunlight, okay, protecting with clothing and hats, and using a physical sunscreen on exposed areas is preferred. Okay, so let's break that down. All right. So what they're saying is, number one, young babies, their skin is a lot more sensitive than ours. Yeah. So they can get burned very, very easily and quickly. Okay. None of us ever intends to burn our child when we're outside. It's never an intentional thing to do. I've seen young babies being accidentally burned. I remember one little one that I looked after had been sitting in her auntie's arms in dappled shade, and the sun had moved, and just part of that dappling had obviously gone onto her head, and she ended up with sunburn on there. Now, that is, that's an accident. We never intend to do that. But that's when making all of these preventative measures a really good habit is a great thing. Okay, so what are we going to do? First of all, being able to dress our baby in, loose, long clothing to block that sun is important. Remember, different weaves of clothes as well. If something is a really loose weave, UV can still get through that. So that's something that needs to be considered. Keeping young babies out of the sun, so sitting in the shade, etc., is always a good thing. Using the appropriate sunshade on your pram. And I don't mean, putting beach towels or muslin wraps over the top and pinning them so there's no air circulation. Don't do that, because air circulation is incredibly important. The temperature in the pram or the capsule can raise super high super quickly. We've done an experiment with that. Go check out our blog on pram temperatures if you don't know about that. But using the appropriate sunshade that's been manufactured for your pram that has lots of good airflow is really important. Okay, using hats and so on. But let's get realistic here. Okay, let's get realistic. Sometimes you can't keep your baby out of the sun. If we think about it, what happens if you've got two other kids that you've got to pick up from school, and you've got your 3-month-old baby in the pouch? You've got to get, from the car or walking from home to school. Let's be realistic. There are going to be times when your baby may have to be exposed to the sun. I just don't think that it is realistic to say, just don't let your baby go into the sun. It's just not in living in Australia. It's just not going to happen. Okay. So thinking about those sorts of things, that if you've got bub in the pouch, you've got their long but loose sleeves on and pants, etc., you've got the hat over them, but their feet are exposed, then according to the Australian College of Dermatologists, it is perfectly reasonable, okay, to be using a physical sunscreen on their feet, on their hands, on their exposed areas. Okay, that is perfectly reasonable. We want to minimize the areas that we're putting it on, but you know what? Let's be really realistic. It's okay. All right. So that is one thing. All right. Really important. Now, the other thing that we want to think about here as well is that with little bubs, if they do accidentally get burnt, okay, I think it's important that you do seek medical help. Why? Because their skin is incredibly sensitive and they're at risk of dehydration, okay? So there are two reasons why that if they did get sunburnt, that you would seek medical advice with that, okay? So whether it's a call to your GP, whether it's a call to Health Direct or Nurse on Call or whatever advice line is in your state, that's important, okay, because they are quite little. Now, what about patch testing? Because this is something that we often see in the media. I know a couple of years ago, there was a big thing about a certain brand of sunscreen that seemed to be causing a lot of irritation in children. And so one of the important things that you do is a patch test before you use any kind of sunscreen product. Okay, that's important. And what you're going to do is just apply a small amount just on the inside of the forearm, okay, and watch to see if the skin reacts. All right. So that's what you're going to do. If any irritation or sensitivity occurs, you're going to have to try another product. I don't know about you, but I've got one child who reacts really, really a lot to sunscreens. She does. So I reckon I spent, I don't even know how much cash I spent on different sunscreens with her, but I learned pretty quickly. So what I'd do was that when I was out and about with friends who had kids there, if they had a different sunscreen, I'd ask to use a little bit of it and I'd patch test on her, so I didn't have to keep buying different ones. We ended up finding 3 or 4 which were great with her. Still definitely the physical sunscreens are definitely better with her, but everybody is different. So this is part 1. I just want to recap what we've been talking about, and then I'll tell you what we're going to do in part 2. So can you put sunscreen on your baby? According to the Australian College of Dermatologists, you can. It is preferred that it is using a physical sunscreen, and it is preferred that you try and cover, bub up first, trying to avoid the sun, but realistically we know we can't do that all the time. Seeking out shade, hats, all of that kind of stuff, okay? So that is the ideal. However, on the parts that you can't avoid being exposed into the sun, then using a physical sunscreen is the preferred method. So what we will cover in the next one with Dr. Deb Levy, my fabulous Wednesday sidekick, our paediatrician, then what we'll also cover is the use of sunscreen and vitamin D. Okay, we will cover sunscreens for kids with sensitive skin, such as children with eczema and so on. So we'll have a look at that. And also we'll answer any questions that you have in regards to children and sunscreens. Now, before we do go, just for those of you who would like this particular resource, I'm just going to share this with you, and this is there we go. This is the Australian College of Dermatologists positioning statement on sun protection and sunscreens. So it's really important that this is the resource that we're using, and also Deb will also talk about next week a whole lot of other stuff going into this too. So this does have a whole lot of different stuff about what sun protection is, why it's important, and it's a really interesting read. So I will put this in the comments below for you to have a read of, okay, so that you too can have a look through that. So I hope that is a good resource for you. We will be back soon with part 2. So tomorrow, Deb and I are talking about something else. We are actually saying, let's go shopping. What do you need to have in your medicine cabinet and your first aid kit? So that will be a fun one. 10 a.m. tomorrow. Tune into our pages. Okay, and then we will bring you the sunscreen one super soon. So it'll either be the next week or the week after. So look out for that one. And also, just to let you know, at CPR Kids in New South Wales, we are doing face-to-face classes again. Yay! We are obviously being very cautious due to the nature that a lot of our classes are in hospitals and with vulnerable populations. So we are adhering to all of the health and government regulations when it comes to being COVID safe. And we are keeping on our online program as well. So we've got different options for online courses that we're going to continue on. So if you prefer not to learn face-to-face, we absolutely still have those going as well. So we can't wait to see you in our classes. So thank you very much, everyone. Now, it looks like I've just tried to post that the College of Dermatologists again. I'm just going to try that again, just in case it didn't work. It looks like it didn't work on a couple of platforms. There we go. Done. Okay, so have a read of that, and we'll see you for part 2 very soon. Okay, bye everyone.